Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teacher Certification class. If you're standing out there, you can be seated. Thanks for tuning in again, wherever you're tuning in from. Tonight, we're going to be continuing on in the Peaceful Solution Junior High Acceptance Unit. If you don't have the acceptance unit with you at home, please go ahead and go to the top of the Facebook page that you're watching, and you should see the character manual, and then you'll also see a little drop down arrow where you can hit the arrow, and you should see the acceptance manual pop up. So you can go ahead and download that. It's a free download. You know, it's always free with the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. Moral character shouldn't cost us anything. You know, it's something we should have all been taught when we were growing up. But the Peaceful Solution makes it possible. So we thank you for joining us this evening. And as I said, we're going to be picking up tonight. We're going to pick up on page 72. Bullying is bad news. But before we do that, we're going to kind of go over a little bit about what we went over in the last class. I covered some things about what's called generalizations, stereotyping, and cliques, or proper pronunciation is cliques. I'll call it cliques just for, since most people know it as that. But anyway, it says on the top of page 70, sometimes fitting in and being accepted means finding the group of friends that you're most comfortable with. And, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. We need friends. We need friendships. We need as many friends as we can possibly have. You know, we should try to make friends with as many people as we can. But as we've been learning in this chapter, you know, this chapter, if you recall, is called The Importance of Friends and Friendship. And, you know, on page 63, it actually talked about that there's 4 stages that we go through in choosing friends. You know, the observation stage, the introductory stage, the getting to know you stage, and then finally the deciding stage, you know, carefully considering if we really want to pursue this friendship or not. So, you know, we shouldn't just willingly, you know, take everyone as a friend. We need to go through these stages as we've been learning, you know, to figure out, you know, is this somebody I really want to be friends with? Because a lot of people have ended up befriending people that had a great personality. They had similar likes and dislikes. They had, you know, they seemed to be kind and considerate or whatever, but after getting to know them for a while and getting to know their true character, you know, the true character came out, and they found out that that person really wasn't who they appeared to be. And remember when we learned about in the first book, the character unit, it talked about more than meets the eye. You know, there's, you know, when we meet people, we only see what, you know, first comes to our eyes. You know, we see how they're dressed, we see how they present themselves, etc. But we really don't know the person. We don't know the inner person. We don't know the character of that person. It takes time to get to know people. And that's why it's important, as we see on page 63 here in the acceptance unit, that if we think we see someone we'd like to be friends with, we need to go through these 4 stages of deciding to be friends. And if we would do that, man, think of the well, just think of all the pain, suffering, loss of what we thought was a friendship, etc., or loss of relationships. Think of all that sorrow and pain we could save ourselves if we would go through these stages first before we decide to befriend somebody. You know, whether it's a friend or whether it's a mate, a future mate, or whatever. You know, we really need to get to know the person. You know, if we would do that, if we would get to know their character, who they really are, you know, their morals, their values, their beliefs, if we would really get to know that first, we could save ourselves a lot of hassle in the future. So now back on page 70, we were reviewing what I went over last time on page 70 about generalizations. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to fit in with people, and wanting to be around those who share similar interests and values is normal, but it doesn't change the fact that we're individuals. Even though it's a fact that no two people are alike, there are those who form opinions and make statements about others that make it appear that specific groups of people are alike in certain ways. And, we went over in the last class, how they have certain sayings like blondes are dumb, silly, or dizzy, athletes are dumb jocks, or smart or studious people are geeks, you know, and we learned that that's not true. It's not true, but these are what's called generalizations, and people use these, and they're cruel. They're cruel statements that are hurt to devalue and belittle other people, you know. And I know it seems to be acceptable nowadays to call people that are really great at something a geek, like a computer geek or some kind of electronic geek, or, a plumbing geek, or somebody that's really studious or smart at a certain subject. But it really started out as a very disparaging term, and we went over that in the last class. So, we really need to be careful about using these kind of statements about people. And, the name calling goes back to what we first learned in the character unit on page, I believe it was page 8 of the character unit, about, immoral attitude toward other people. An immoral attitude toward life consists of behaviors that devalue, belittle, hurt, and take from others both emotionally and physically. Behaviors that include name calling, teasing, bullying. Bullying, that's something else we're going to go over tonight. We're going to get into the bullying aspect. But name calling, teasing, and bullying, these things are behaviors that devalue people. It belittles people. It hurts them emotionally and physically. So we're not displaying a moral attitude toward life, toward others, when we partake of name calling, geek, or whatever else we come up with. We need to not be name calling, and that includes ourselves. We learn later on in the Peaceful Solution that, we shouldn't even be calling ourselves names, because remember, you have to care about yourself. You have to value and respect yourself as well. You have to be a friend to yourself. And, if you're calling yourself stupid, or I'm so dumb, or I'm so, I'm so ugly, or whatever else you're saying to yourself, if you wouldn't do that, if you shouldn't do that to somebody else, we shouldn't do it to ourselves either. Okay. So back here on page 70 in the acceptance unit, it says, now, did you know that because of generalizations, like I just went over, people within our own culture and within our schools are stereotyped? And we learned that word stereotype meant, it meant a fixed idea about a certain person or a group of people, a stereotype. And some common examples of stereotypes are like tall black young men like basketball, or not all girls are as smart, or not girls are not as smart as boys, etc. Those are called stereotypes, and we don't want to stereotype people. Everybody's different, and that's what we learn in the Peaceful Solution. We're all unique individuals with different hopes, dreams, etc., skills, etc. On page 71, we went over school cliques. Are you in or out? And we learned about, all the different hierarchy of cliques in schools. Like the top of the list, you got the jocks, the real smart people, or the real pretty, handsome, the pretty girls or the handsome guys. They seem to rule the school. And then it goes down, you get down to the people that are just kind of floaters that go between groups. And then you had the stoners, the people that like to get high and party, which were usually real great friends, or at least associating somewhat with the ones at the top, because they were supplying the drugs to the jocks and the popular people at the top that like to have parties. So there was some association with them. And then at the bottom of the list, you had the emos and the what they call emos, and the animes, the ones that like watching animated Japanese videos, etc. So there's a hierarchy we went over of school cliques. And we learned, that cliques they tend to leave other people out. Like if you're let's say you're in the clique of cheerleaders, usually, if they'll say, well, you can't be part of our cheerleading clique if you have any friends that aren't cheerleaders, or anything like that. So they exclude other people, and that's a problem. We shouldn't be excluding people. We should want, as I said at the beginning of the class, to have as many friends as possible. And we should always give everyone an opportunity, to be our friend, and we should get to know that person before we just decide whether or not, we want to be friends with that person. We should get to know that person, even though their personality might be the same as ours, their character might be really great. And we might be missing out on a really great friend by rejecting them just because they don't have the same likes and dislikes that we have. We don't want to do that. We're selling ourselves short when we do that. We're selling others short. So let's look at page 72 and let's get started in tonight's lesson. Page 72. But before we do, about bullying is bad news, before we do that, we'll go back here and we'll go to LP4, page LP4D, and we're going to look at number 7, step 7 in our purpose, objective, and procedures here. It says, tell students that sometimes people go to extreme measures to make friends and fit in. Bullying, criticizing, and putting others down are some of the negative ways people try to earn friends. We're going to emphasize that bullying is wrong. Okay, and there's a tendency in our culture, I've heard it, all through my years of growing up, and I still hear it today. Oh, bullying's normal, boys are bullies, or they got a lot of testosterone or whatever, they have, they're just, that's boys being boys or guys being guys. Well, no, as we learn in the character unit of the Peaceful Solution, it's not normal. It's not normal to treat others in this bullying fashion. I just got done reading on page 8 in the character unit that it's immoral to name call, tease, bully. Those are all things that bring people down, that devalue others. So we shouldn't be partaking in that in any way, but we'll get deeper into it here. It says, have students turn to page 72 through 74 of their handbooks and read section entitled Bullying is Bad News. Stress that if anyone is being bullied, they should tell an authority figure in order to stop the bullying. They don't need to take it into their own hands like some have done. We're going to see tonight, some have taken it into their own hands and thought, well, I'm tired of this bullying. I'm going to get it to stop, and it's going to be on my terms. We're going to handle this the way I see fit. Well, we're going to learn the appropriate way to deal with bullying, like telling an authority figure in order to stop the bullying. And I've seen it myself, and I believe, students, when they tell me, well, I went to the teacher and the teacher told me, that, that's just normal, for people to bully people, or the teacher didn't do anything about it. In fact, the teacher bullied me too. The teacher bullies me too. So, which is the case in some cases, sad to say, children are bullied or abused by certain teachers. But if your teacher doesn't listen to you, you do always have the option to go to another teacher or to the principal or somebody in a higher authority, your parents, somebody else, to let them know, that you're not getting the relief you need from the person that you went to initially. But you should always go to if you're being bullied, by kind of getting ahead of myself, but if you're being bullied in your classroom, the first person that needs to know about it is the teacher that's over that classroom. You should always give them the opportunity to handle the problem before you go to somebody else about it. It says, under no circumstances should you retaliate. Remember what that word retaliate means. It means, in fact, let's turn over to page 13 in our character unit of the Peaceful Solution that we went through first. Page 13 gives us a definition of what retaliation is. At the top of the page, it says, aside from being cruel, let's see, it's talking about, okay, I'm going to skip down a little bit. It says, hey, destroying something that doesn't belong to you is not fun, it's not right, and it's definitely not cool. It only leads to retaliation, and more retaliation. And that word retaliation, it means to return like for like, especially harm for harm. To pay back an injury or an insult of some kind or something in kind. In other words, somebody says something to you, you say something back to them. Somebody steals something from you, you steal something from them. Somebody bullies you, you bully them in return. Okay? And this is what we're trying to avoid. We don't want the retaliation. In fact, when you think of the word retaliation, you know, the word tally is in there. When you tally something, it means you add something up. So when you retaliate, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get one up on the other person. You're trying to be one up on the other person. But the problem with that is that other person is going to be one up on you. They're going to want to be one up on you as well. So it's just going to keep going back and forth, and each one's going to try to get the upper hand on the other. But that's not going to bring about a peaceful resolution to the problem. It's only guaranteed to make matters worse, where eventually, you know, this thing could really blow up, as we see today in a lot of school shootings, a lot of school violence, where other students, innocent students, get caught in the crossfire of two people that are going at it against each other. Innocent people can sometimes get pulled into it and get hurt or even killed. So under no circumstances, it says, should we retaliate. Retaliation will only make the situation worse. So let's go ahead and turn over to page 72. And let's start reading here. And bullying is bad news. Now it says, did you know that there are some people who actually take pleasure in hurting others? Did you know that? There's actually people that enjoy seeing people hurt physically, emotionally, etc. It's just a fact of life right now. And the reason it's a fact of life is because the moral education that you're receiving right now, the training that you're getting here, was not given to them. In fact, if you think about it, in the movies, you know, in the action movies, you know, especially like in action comedies, people actually do things to hurt other people, and the audience, or, you know, they'll make it seem funny, you know, even though the guy got kicked in a part of his body that's very, very, it hurts very, very much, or, you know, there was something done to that person, you know, to inflict some kind of physical injury. They make it appear funny where the audience will kind of chuckle and laugh about it, which is actually training us in a subtle way. It's training us to laugh at other people's suffering and to think suffering is not a big deal, that someone's pain should be laughed at. And this is something we must avoid if we want to develop this moral character. We must be aware of this, that Hollywood is subtly putting that into our minds, that's something that's acceptable. You know, I remember, I got to share this with you. I remember years ago, I saw something on Saturday Night Live that was, well, let's just put it this way. It was very, very, very inappropriate, and it was very, very filthy, and it was something that I thought was very, very inappropriate for television. And the audience was laughing about it. The audience, you know, actually was laughing about it. And I remember talking to the author of The Peaceful Solution about this what I saw on this program. And he told me, no. He said, the people in the audience, he said, you know, they weren't really laughing at it so much. It was that they have what's called an applause light, or you know, they tell them when to laugh and they tell them when to clap and applaud. So they were only following what what they were told to do in that live audience. You know, a live audience is always hyped up before the show, and then they have a light that tells them when to clap, you know, when to scream and yell, when to applaud, etc. He said, don't let it fool you. It wasn't that they were all agreeing with it. They were only doing what they were being trained to do by that sign that told them what to do at the time. And I thought about it. I said, that's exactly right. That's exactly what they do. So all people might not agree with it, but it seems like everyone's agreeing with it because they're clapping and they're laughing and they're hooting and hollering. Okay? But we shouldn't take part in that. We shouldn't get caught up in that. So it says they have yet to learn the peaceful solution, which means showing respect for one another and having healthy interactions to build lasting friendships. Instead, they steal the rights of others to be safe and rob people of the opportunity to make friends. They are called bullies. It is common knowledge that bullying is a problem in schools today. I would say that's an understatement. And the peaceful solution, we know better than anybody, I believe. We're the experts in the bullying field as far as knowledge about bullying, because in 1994, after the Columbine shooting, or, before the Columbine shootings, when we were putting this together, and certainly it was really, what would you say, in 1999, after the Littleton, Colorado Columbine school shooting, it was really ramped up in getting this moral character education into the schools, because the Peaceful Solution was already putting this together in 1994. The Peaceful Solution became an organization. But when that school shooting in Columbine, I think it killed about 17 people, might have wounded 20-something other people. It was a horrible, horrible incident, the one in Littleton, Colorado. After that, there was a huge cry for moral character education in the schools. And so the Peaceful Solution had this program put together with really that in mind, that Littleton, Colorado incident in mind. That was a huge, huge deal. So bullying, is a huge problem, and it still is. Littleton, Colorado is only one of a whole string and slew of school shootings that have taken place since then. Let's go ahead and put up that slide. Let's go ahead and put up this slide. Wow, I can't even believe that. I kind of somewhat forgot to bring my slide pictures with me here, but I can read off the screen here. It says bullying is insolent tyrannizing and personal intimidation. If you can leave that picture up while I'm talking, I'd appreciate it. You see the picture there on the left of the girls. You see the girl standing there with tears in her eyes, and the two girls seem to be standing there teasing her or gossiping about her. She seems to know that they're talking about her. That's a form of bullying. Then you see, what we normally think of as bullying there on the right, with the boy. He's got the boy against the wall, probably trying to take his lunch money or something, or threatening him in some way. That word bullying, it means insolent tyrannizing, personal intimidation. That word insolent means showing a rude and improper lack of respect. Okay? And remember what we learned in the Peaceful Solution in the initial unit and character about respect, showing that care and concern for other people. That word tyrannize, because it said insolent tyrannizing. Some of the synonyms for tyrannizing is like, bullying or oppressing, subjugating, persecuting. It's something that, where you oppress an individual. It could be mentally, it could be physically, it could be making them feel, it could be derogatory language or derogatory actions toward that person. It could be, bullying can be done just by a look, a certain look we give somebody, we give them that eyeball, that evil eye, they call it, where that intimidating look. Okay, that's all part of this insolent tyrannizing or personal intimidation. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And as we're going to learn, there's many different forms of bullying now. We used to think of bullying as a little boy on the school bus pulling the girl's hair, or something, or the boy pushing the guy against the locker or something at school. But now there's countless, the advent of the electronic gadgets and the social media. Now we have what's called cyberbullying, which is just a form of electronic bullying. But the things that take place in cyberbullying is things like teasing, spreading rumors and gossip, threats. Um, somebody puts up a Facebook post and you, comment on it and start making hateful comments about whatever they put up, using mean words or harassment or spreading lies, uh, putting up pictures. I know we talked a few classes ago about uh, putting up personal pictures of people in compromising positions, etc., that you don't have permission to be putting up just to try to get, likes on Facebook or something, or get people to, to bully somebody and get other people to hate on someone or something else like that. Like we see there on that phone, it says, everyone hates you, go kill yourself. Texting someone a message like that. Countless students have experienced cyberbullying like that, and countless students have I believe Chris has brought out in the past that, I believe suicide is among teenagers is the number one killer of teenagers, is suicide. And we've actually been to schools where children have actually taken their own lives. And it's a very, very sad thing that a child should think that they have to resort to that. But if you're not taught the peaceful solution character education program and how to handle your emotions or how to handle the bully, the appropriate ways of dealing with a bully, etc., how would you really know how to handle these situations? I mean, we take for granted that children should know, well, they can go to their parents or they can go to the teacher, or they can, if they're feeling suicidal or they're depressed, or they should know that there's people that, well, they might know that they might know that they can go to their mother or their father or somebody and talk to them about it, but they don't even know how to control their initial emotions. The embarrassment, the shame, the hurt. They don't know how to handle that initial emotion, which can sometimes lead to the anger or the other emotions that they can't let go of. And unless they're taught and trained how to deal with emotions, we can't expect them to make the right choices in every situation. That's where the peaceful solution is so important to teach to these young people, so they can learn how to handle those emotions, so they can learn how to deal with the bullies, so they can learn how to deal with their own thoughts about what's taking place in their life with the person that's antagonizing and teasing them and name calling or whatever else. I can tell you, I've been a victim of the bully. I've been the bully, and uh, I've been friends of people that were bullies. Okay, so I've been in every spectrum of the bullying. When I was younger. But I can tell you, being on the receiving end of the bullying is hard to take. It's very hard to take, and I understand why children sometimes resort to doing what they do when they don't have the education that we're offering here. I can see where they just think there's just no other way out. And it's so hurtful. What children have to go through, and some of the mocking and the ridiculing and it's just endless. And sometimes I remember Chris bringing up one time the young girl Phoebe Cates. She was a pretty young girl, but other girls in school would bully her because she was pretty. They would mock and ridicule her and tease her because they were jealous. And I guess they got her to thinking, that she needed to take her own life, and she did. And it's very sad. Let's go ahead and look at the next slide. I believe I had another slide. Yeah, there's many forms of bullying. I remember growing up watching All in the Family. There's a picture there of Archie. He used to bully his wife all the time, and it wasn't like he took her by the scruff of the neck and pushed her against the wall. He never did anything physical to his wife, but he would always berate her, belittle her, name call, mock, and ridicule his wife. And that's a form of bullying right there. You see the look he's giving her. That's a form of bullying, that intimidating look. But don't get me wrong, sometimes wives bully their husbands too. um, I've been on the receiving end of that sometimes. Not now. I mean, years and years ago, but not recently. But back when I was growing up, and some of relationships I had with people that before I even knew about the peaceful solution, that was going on constantly between both parties. So wives can bully husbands just like husbands can bully wives. And it can be verbally, it can be physically, it can be without saying a word, giving them the cold shoulder and etc. Let's go to the next slide. Children can bully their pets. As you see this boy here kicking this cat, Now, we should know that animals have feelings. They when you kick them, when you inflict some kind of pain on them, it hurts. So children can bully their pets, and why do they bully them? Well, they're bigger than them, and they know the cat's probably not going to turn around and swallow them, after they kick them, unless it's a. Now they wouldn't do that to a tiger or a lion, I guarantee you. That kind of cat they wouldn't be abusing, right? But because that cat's a small cat and they think it's just gonna take them kicking it, they don't have any problem with bullying it like you saw there. Let's go to the next slide. And then we have nations that bully one another, the war, the fighting, the threatening among nations. One nation tells another nation, if you don't submit to what we want you to do, or you don't give us what we want, we don't get that oil, we don't get that land, we don't get the kind of response from you that we want, then we're going to take over, we're going to come in, and we're going to do damage. You know why we're going to do it? Because we got bigger weapons than you do, right? It's always the bully is the one that thinks, well, I'm tougher than this other group, this nation. I got bigger weapons, I got nuclear weapons. All they got is tanks and guns or whatever else. And nations can do the same thing with one another, And it's not just the action of war, it's also words that are spoken. The threatening, the constant threatening and intimidation between leaders, world leaders that haven't been taught the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program. And that's why, I feel for this younger generation right now because, and not just this generation, but generations past, they've watched the actions of these world leaders or the politicians, how they berate one another, belittle one another, lie about one another, put each other down. Because of political affiliation, they see this constant bullying going on. And it seems to be normal. It seems to be just the way you do things. Well, if you're a Democrat, you're supposed to bully a Republican. If you're a Republican, you're supposed to bully that Democrat. If you're an independent, well, both sides are going to bully you, or you're supposed to bully the other two sides. This is the way it seems that they've been taught to think, because that's what they see constantly. And it seems normal, that it's a normal action, but it's not. It's anything but normal. The teasing, the name calling, the trying to one up on one another. It's just none of this is normal. Can I see the next slide? I don't remember what I had. Yeah. Now this is an interesting one too, about bullying. Over 160,000 kids refuse to go to school each day for fear of being bullied. Fear of being bullied. So we have, I know I'm going to give you just a personal example. When I was living in Laredo, Texas, I used to sit in truancy court. The judges used to send some of the truancy students to the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program to teach them, responsibility and learning, to get up in the morning and go to school and, do what they're supposed to do. And I would literally see it when I came to truancy court. I think they held it once every couple of weeks. I would literally see hundreds of students paraded through the courtroom, standing in front of the JP, the Justice of the Peace, usually is what it was. And the Justice of the Peace would sit there and read, all right, you've got 170 unexcused absences. What do you have to say? And it was usually not the child that had to do the talking. It was the parents that had to speak for the child. You know, they were juvenile, and the parents would usually be standing there with them. And the judges, a lot of times, or the JPs, a lot of times, they would fine the parents. You know, they would fine the parents, you know, $50, $100, $200, or they would give them the option of coming to the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, which some would take, but a lot of the parents, oh, I'll just pay the fine. You know, I'll pay the $50, I'll pay the $100 because my child's got, you know, 100 or 200 unexcused absences. So the parent would end up paying the fine, but the child didn't learn a thing. And then, you know, a couple months later, you know, the child would be right back there in front of the justice of the peace with another string of truancies, or, you know, unexcused absences. And it was like a repeat cycle over and over again. So the children weren't learning anything unless they came to the Peaceful Solution and started learning, you know, this moral character. And the parents, all they were doing is losing money, and they weren't realizing that, look, it's going to be much more valuable to send my child to a moral character education class where he can learn to stop being late or stop skipping school or whatever else. But the point I was trying to make about this is one very important factor that was never addressed. Because I talked to some of the children and I said, why is it that you didn't want to go to school? Like, why is it that you had 160 unexcused absences? And they would say, Mr. Krause, I'm tired of being bullied. I was bullied all day long. I just got so sick of it. And nobody did anything about it. You know, none of the teachers, none of the administration. I told them, my parents, but then no one ever did anything. So I was afraid to go to school. I was afraid to go to school. And I kept hearing that over and over and over from different students that had, you know, hundreds of truancy, you know, cases of truancy. But the judge, I noticed none of the JPs ever asked the children, hey, why aren't you going to school? Why are you not going to school like everybody else? If they would have asked them, they would have found out 9 times out of 10 they weren't going to school because of all the bullying that they were on the receiving end of. And you know, it's a sad thing, but you know, that's where we really need to be asking questions, because we could learn a lot from the young people if we would ask. So we just saw, you know, 160,000 plus students are afraid to go to school every day because of the bullying. And that's a very real concern. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide if we can. It says here, each month, 282,000 students are physically assaulted in some way in secondary schools throughout the United States. And that number is growing. And we can expect it to continue to grow if we don't do anything. If we don't implement, you know, the character education that's necessary, you know, such as the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, if we don't implement this, the children aren't going to be learning the importance of valuing one another, you know, respecting one another, respecting themselves, valuing themselves. You know, they're not going to learn that what we just learned on page 8 in the character unit about, you know, immoral behavior includes name calling, teasing, bullying. Because a lot of times, you know, I remember when I was growing up, if you're a boy, boys, there was something about, you know, friends. And remember, I didn't have real friends when I was growing up because I never went through the stages that we talked about here a few pages ago, the getting to know you stage and all those stages that we went through. I didn't choose my friends that way because I wasn't educated to do so. So I pretty much just hung out with people that had similar likes and dislikes. And a lot of times our similar likes and dislikes weren't positive. We had similar likes that we liked to go bust into people's homes, or, you know, we had similar likes where we liked drinking parties, you know, but a lot of the things that we liked weren't very positive at times. But, you know, the thing about it was, you know, I would choose those kind of people to hang out with. And, you know, we didn't go through the stages that we're learning here in the Peaceful Solution. And a lot of times, you know, we ended up hanging out with people that, you know, quite frankly, you know, were not a very great, they weren't what you would call, they weren't a great example, but they weren't the crowd that you would necessarily be wanting to hang around. And I got into a lot of trouble. And I got a lot of other people into a lot of trouble because of my behavior. But can you go back to that slide one more time? No, the one after that. Yeah, right there. Yeah, that number's growing. You know, the number's growing. We can expect it to grow because remember, if we're not teaching these children the proper way to choose friends and the proper way to behave and the proper way to treat one another, we can only expect things to get worse. We can't expect it to get better. We can't expect the children just to figure this out on their own. You know, we've got to give them this education. We got to do whatever we can. I mean, if the parents, if you know, parents, if you're listening out there, you know, and there's a lot of parents that watch this program, this certification class, that actually have their children with them. You know, they'll actually have the children watch this class along with them, so they can learn these things, because a lot of schools just aren't teaching them, or they're teaching them, you know, little bits and pieces of certain things about character. You know, like, you know, you walk through the hallway and you see the word respect hanging on the wall, or you see the word kindness, or, you know, you see some kind of character type word, but there's really no explanation. There's no expounding on these things. And you know, so a child is kind of left to theirself when they read the word respect to kind of guess to their, you know, think to theirself, well, respect. Oh yeah, respect. I know what that is. I saw that rapper with that big chain around his neck that said respect. Yeah, I know what respect is. Yeah, I know what respect is. I saw that poster, you know, of Al Capone, or, you know, what's that guy, Scarface, you know, and it said money, power, respect, and he had a gun and a pile of cocaine on the table. Yeah, I know what respect is, you know. It's when everybody thinks you're really, really cool, and, you know, you got a lot of power, you know, because you got guns and you got drugs, you know, that's respect. You know, people are going to respect you. No, this is the false teaching of respect. This is a false respect. It's not respect at all. Okay, but this is the kind of thing that children learn, and these things stick in their mind. And unless you come back and you show them, hey, look, you know, I know that poster says this, or, you know, that TV program said that, or that movie showed this. Unless you correct it and you show them what these things really mean, what respect really is, you can't expect a child to know. You can't even expect an adult to know. There's adults that learn this, and they learn the same things. And they thought, man, I thought I knew something about what respect was, or what bullying was, or, you know, I thought I knew what character was, or, you know, personality. I thought I knew all those things, and I didn't know nothing. Let's go to the next slide. I think I had another. Yeah. Says statistics suggest that revenge due to bullying is the number one motivator for the school shootings in the United States. Yes, bullying. Bullying is the number one motivator for school shootings. You know, in other words, you know, the shooter decides they think they have no other option but to bring a gun to school to deal with the bullies, like you see the boys up there in the Columbine shooting there in the lunchroom. And I think there might be another slide. Okay, we don't need to see that yet. We'll save that for a little bit later. Okay, so let me continue reading here on page 72. It says, if you are the bully, think about your actions. Choosing to belittle or hurt others for fun or just because you can is cruel. Picking on, teasing, and physically assaulting someone can affect him or her for life. It can also cause them to take their life. I know this for a fact because I've seen it occur when I was an adult. When I was in prison, everybody knows I have you know, we all had past lives in the Peaceful Solution. When I was young, I was in prison, and I saw a man get picked on so much that he actually took a fire extinguisher off the wall, and he pulled the pin and breathed in the fire extinguisher chemicals and killed himself. And, you know, it's like I didn't do anything to stop them from bullying him. I didn't say anything. In fact, I was bullying the guy sometimes myself. So I know that these things take place, and I'm going to tell you right now, those are things that haunt you the rest of your life. When you partake of these things, that's why we're trying to teach you now, the young people, stop and think about your actions before you do them, because you're going to have to live with the consequences of your decisions for the rest of your life. And you always need to think before you speak, or before you decide you want to bully or intimidate or harass somebody, because that person, you don't know what they're capable of doing. They could retaliate against you because they haven't learned not to retaliate, or they could actually harm themselves. Okay, and they could actually take their life, and a lot of people have, and a lot of people felt really bad afterwards. But is that going to bring that person back because you feel bad about it? No. So that's why we need to stop and think before we do these things, so we don't bring harm. So we can't, we don't have to live with the regrets that a lot of us have to live with. Picking on, teasing, and physically assaulting someone can affect him or her for life. And guess who else it will affect? You. Studies done on adults who bullied others as children prove that they regretted and were ashamed of their actions. Like I just told you, I'm ashamed of mine. Many of them longed to go back in time and change the way they treated others. Hurting someone is a no-brainer. It takes far more intelligence to interact in a positive and healthy way. Don't wait until you've grown up to realize that your actions are hurting others. Don't wait. Like I'm 60, I'll be 60 years old in just a few days. Okay. And I'm just, since I've learned the peaceful solution, over the last, 20 years or so, now I realize, right? But man, now the young people that come to this class, the parents that are taking this course, the people that are tuned in all over the world that are getting this information, you don't have to have those regrets. You don't have to be ashamed later on of your actions. You can make the right choice in advance. And that's the beauty of the peaceful solution, is that it teaches us how to avoid the problems. It teaches you how to handle. It teaches you how to keep problems from taking place and to begin with. But if a problem does come up, you're already going to know how to solve the problem because you know the peaceful solution. It says, don't wait till you've grown up to realize your actions are hurting others. You can change your behavior and begin to interact with empathy and concern now. Remember, empathy. If someone's being bullied, you need to empathize with that person. In other words, put yourself in their shoes. Put yourself in their situation. How would you feel if somebody was teasing you, calling you names, hitting you, pulling your hair, or whatever else they do? This hazing that they do in some schools. They really take it to a really drastic level. Sticking people's heads in the toilet, tying people up and doing really, really horrible things to them, thinking that it's all in fun, or it's, part of the school ritual. They're hazing in colleges and things that go on. These things are against the law. These things are actually assault. These things are actually very cruel, and they're a form of torture. Okay, and we shouldn't want any part of that as students of the peaceful solution. It says, you will earn far more respect by showing consideration and compassion for others than by being cruel and disrespectful. You'll also have the satisfaction of knowing that your friends like you because of your personality and character. They would probably want to be around you instead of avoiding you. Years from now, you'll be able to look back on your childhood and not be ashamed of the choices you made in regards to how you treated others. That's the other thing you need to think about. If you're a bully, in grade school, whether it's elementary school or secondary school, like junior high or high school, unless you change, unless you get some information like you're learning right here about bullying and how to stop being a bully, you're probably going to be a bully all through your life. Okay? In different ways. You might not be doing the same exact things you did to other people in high school or junior high, but you're going to still bully people in certain ways until you really learn to stop the bullying. Okay, it says, if you're friends with someone who bullies others, ask yourself what drew you to him or her in the first place. Okay, and that's something important, why we need to think, okay, if I have a friend that's a bully, what attracted me to that person? What is it about me, you know, that what is it within myself and in my own mind, in my own heart, that would make me want to hang out with somebody that that brings harm to another human being? Because remember, moral means it doesn't bring harm to anyone, whether it's physical, mental, or the environment or whatever. You don't bring harm. You're harmless. Okay? But if you're hanging out with somebody who's a bully, you need to ask yourself, what drew you to that person? What was it about them that made you think that you should hang out with that person? Oh, that's what I was going to tell you. Kind of lost my train of thought earlier about when I was young. Young boys, we used to think that, once we became friends, we were very respectful to each other before we became friends because we wanted to win each other's friendship. But once we became friends, we started to do things like we would hit each other, like it would start out like we would turn our arm like this and the other person would hit us in the arm as hard as they could. And then we would hit them in their arm as hard as we could, just to see how hard we could hit each other. And sometimes it would hurt. It would hurt bad. Okay? But yet, that's what friends were expected to do. That's what young boys were expected to do, because that's just normal friendships when you're young boys. But it's not normal. It's anything but normal. Inflicting suffering and pain on somebody is normal. People actually broke each other's arms doing stuff like that. Okay, that's not being a friend. A friend doesn't bring harm to somebody in any way, shape, or form. But that's what we were taught was normal friendship. It was the same thing with joining groups or gangs. I remember when I was young, there was some neighborhood boys I wanted to hang out with that were a little bit older than me. And I thought they were really cool because they drove motorcycles and all I had was my little Schwinn 10-speed or whatever. And I wanted to hang out with these guys. And, they were, a few years older than me, and they had these forts. This is in Alaska. We had just very few months where you could even do anything outside building forts and stuff. But we had underground forts, and I wanted to join their fort, So they said, okay, well, there's certain things you got to do in order to join our fort, We had to go through what's called initiation, And one of the ways they would initiate us is we had to bend over and let them shoot us in the rear end with a BB gun. And the guy that shot you, he would have that Daisy rifle and he would pump that thing up as hard as he could before he shot you. But these are the kind of things that we did because we wanted to be friends. Air quotes, right? We wanted to be friends. Friends? That kind of stuff can really, really damage a person. Could kill somebody, shooting somebody. But these are the kind of things we grew up with, thinking it was just normal, Well, you have to do those things if you want to join a group or a gang. You shouldn't be partaking of any of these things, young people. We need to get away from these things. So it says, it says, what drew you to that person in the first place? Were you afraid of being bullied? Or do you think it's exciting being around someone who is feared by others? Even if you never raise a hand or say a word to hurt someone, just the fact that you hang around someone who chooses to hurt others reflects upon your character. Have you ever heard the saying, guilty by association? You ever heard that? Well, by supporting someone who intentionally hurts others, you too are guilty of bullying. And that's something we need to seriously consider. We are guilty by association. Birds of a feather flock together. If you're hanging out with bullies in school, the teachers, the principal, and other students they're gonna automatically assume that you're a bully too, because you're hanging out with that person. Consider the choices you're making in regard to who your friends are. Then be courageous. Speak up and don't continue to support someone who hurts others, The only way that you should support someone who hurts other people is support them by leading them to the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program and showing them, that this is immoral behavior and the damage it's doing not only to them, but to the person that they're bullying. Because a lot of times people just think this kind of stuff is just normal and harmless, but it's anything but. Let's look on page 73. So there's some simple solutions for dealing with a bully, it says. And I'm not going to have much time to even get into this, but I will just say a couple things about it. The simple solution for dealing with a bully is not to go to Walmart and buy a gun and come to school with a gun and simply get rid of the guy, or threaten him with a knife or any such thing. There shouldn't be any of the retaliation, any of the threats, etc. And I want to give you kind of a preview right now of what you're going to learn in the next class. If we could go to the next slide, because these are a kind of a short list of things that should be done if you're bullied at school, okay? What's going to be covered in the next class is you need to try your best to ignore the bully. Let's go to the next slide. The second thing that should be done if you're bullied at school is we need to be determined to treat people the way we want to be treated, not retaliating. Remember, we don't want to treat them the way they're treating us. We want to treat them the way we want to be determined to treat people the way we want to be treated. And that means, if I was in that bully's situation and I was the bully, how would I want to be treated in that situation? Okay? And vice versa. Can I go to the next slide? The third thing that should be done if you're bullied at school is you need to seek the counsel and guidance. Seek counsel and guidance. And that can be from a counselor at school or counsel from your parents, etc. Go to the next slide, final slide. The fourth thing that we're going to go over in the next class about what should be done if you're bullied at school is don't give up on yourself or others in general. Keep it in mind about people. Keep this in mind about people. Because remember, you're learning the peaceful solution. They're not. They're not learning it right now. So give them the benefit of the doubt. Don't give up on them. Realize that, hey, they're not even being taught moral character at this time. They're being taught that it's okay to bully. They're being taught that it's okay to laugh at someone's pain and suffering, in the movies and on television, etc. These are the things that they're being taught and trained to do. So we need to keep that in our mind and not hold it against them. We need to understand that this is what society is teaching is acceptable in a lot of cases. So don't fault them. What we need to fault is a system that makes this appear normal. And we need to do something about it by educating ourselves in the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program, sharing these things with everyone we can. Hey, even in our daily interaction, it's not like you have to carry the Peaceful Solution Character Education book with you everywhere and stop somebody on the street and start reading out of it. No, it's how we behave. It's how we handle situations. People are going to notice when you don't retaliate against somebody who's treating you disrespectfully. People are going to notice when you don't retaliate. They're going to go, wow, that person was really rough with that person, but that person didn't talk back to him, didn't mistreat them in any way, didn't retaliate. Wow, I wonder why. I wonder where they learned how to handle themselves. So wonder where they got that kind of self-control. Man, I'd sure like to have some of that. And then they might inquire of you, and they might ask, hey, what is it about you? What is it about your ability to not want to get even? And then you can share with them what you've been learning in the Peaceful Solution. And that's how the Peaceful Solution is going to grow, mainly is through our behavior, our example that we set out there. So keep all those things in mind when you're dealing with others on a daily basis, whether you're in school or at work or anywhere in society. So that's all the time we have time for tonight. But the next class, let's see, today is the 22nd. So I believe on 9/26, which is on Sunday at 5:30 p.m., 9/26 at 5:30 p.m. And thank you very much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.